Something very unusual happened on Beacon Hill last month. A bill was taken up by the legislature and passed into law, all within just 31 hours. The new law made it illegal to take a picture up a woman's skirt without her knowledge. And to many political observers, the fact that upskirting wasn't already illegal was almost as shocking as the speed with which lawmakers acted. So why does it usually take so long to pass a bill in Boston? WGBH's partners at the New England Center for Investigative Reporting looked into it, and Rupa Shenoy has the story.
Most people don't know much about what happens on Beacon Hill.
I think there's a lot of red tape.
I would guess several times a year they're in session, and then the other times they're working on bills and talking to constituents.
You know, I think it's a complicated process because it has to go to the House and the Senate, and then there's the discussion. So I'd say it's pretty complicated.
But many people took notice when the House and Senate passed a bill to ban so-called upskirting. The whole process took just 31 hours.
We want to make sure that these types of actions are dealt with in our court system and dealt with swiftly.
This is the very definition of a no-brainer.
But most of the time, the legislature doesn't act that quickly. Over the last 3 years, nearly 18,000 bills have been proposed here, but only 5% were enacted.
But Matt Fenlon, executive director of the state Democratic Party, says the legislature should be judged on the quality of enacted legislation, not the quantity.
We have accomplishments that have put Massachusetts out of the recession faster and stronger than many other states.
And people like Revere resident William Jackson believe legislators spend most of their time deciding important statewide issues, like the upskirting bill.
If you take the entire Senate up there and you take the entire House of Representatives, they're not going to, as a unit, get together to do something for one little town or anything like that. They wouldn't do that.
But that's exactly what they do.
Nearly half of the bills the legislature passed only applied to one town, like an act relative to the charter of the town of Townsend.
Another 158 bills dealt with sick leave for 158 state workers. And 78 dealt with liquor licenses in 78 towns or cities. Meanwhile, advocates for better government like Common Cause argue it may be a good thing that the legislature doesn't move quickly, saying the longer the process takes, the more time citizens have to get involved. Rupa Shenoy, WGBH News.
My next guest worked for 13 years to enact a law named after his daughter. Les Gossel's daughter was murdered in 1999 by a felon out on parole who had 27 prior convictions. In 2012, Melissa's law eliminated the possibility of parole for offenders with 3 violent crime convictions. Welcome to Greater Boston, Les.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're running for office, too. Why did it take so long? Was it a language change? Did you have to convince people of the validity of the bill? Why did it take so long?
That's a really great question. It took a long time for a number of reasons. One, the Commonwealth of Mass feels that the bill didn't give an opportunity for people to get rehabbed. And my statement has been, when you commit multiple felonies, how many times do you have to take to get rehabbed? 3 times, 5 times? The guy who murdered McGuire had 74 convictions, felonies. The guy who did mine my daughter was 27. How many felonies does someone need before you simply hold someone accountable? Mm-hmm. I think the Commonwealth of Mass has an obligation when you see crime that's on feet, that's repeating itself, to say enough is enough. Our children, our wives, our girlfriends should be free from habitual offenders.
Okay, so, but in terms of the length of time, was that, I mean, I know it was frustrating, but eventually you got the law passed.
Eventually.
And there were language changes, and they needed to vet it. As, you know, Common Cause and others said, you got to get the public input.
Right, and that's exactly what happened. We kept going on stations like yourself, and we kept getting publicity, and eventually enough people made enough of a noise that they passed the bill, Melissa won, if you will, that was a compromise, and that's what really happened.
So
and I mean, I think there were some things about took a long time because the bill was considered, and by some parts of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, racist, and the bill was not racist. The bill says
or even lack of, taking civil liberties.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. I gotta bring Jeffrey Beckwith into that. He served as a state rep from '85 to '91. He's now the executive director of the Massachusetts Municipal Association. To the point of 31 hours for the upskirting law, 13 years for
700 days.
Wow. I mean, One is ridiculously fast, the other is ridiculously slow. There's got to be some kind of a compromise.
Well, I think the overall view is it's important to know that the system is designed this way. Massachusetts has the oldest continuously running constitution in the world. Written by John Adams, designed to make it hard to pass legislation. Checks and balances, opposing interests all coming together. The process is intended to be really long and arduous and frustrating, and only proposals with significant merit are intended to get through. Sometimes the process takes longer than one would like. Sometimes it's so short. But in the issue of the upskirting legislation, it was absolutely clear there was a Supreme Judicial Court decision. Yeah. The legislature and the governor and the public all understood the issue, and the legislature acted immediately. Most bills fall somewhere in between. Most bills you don't even want to have become law.
Exactly. So I want to make that point, because let's not conflate the number of legislative issues that are put forward with the fact that only a small number of them are passed, because for the most part, I mean, no offense to anybody who's floated them, but a lot of them are nonsense.
There are lots of proposals that they're head scratchers, and the process vets them out. They don't move forward. I think in this state we have a tradition of actually being first in the country in a lot of areas, on health care reform, on energy reform, on utility restructuring, on environmental legislation, and all of those bills took many years to pass. Actually, health care access bill that passed in 2006 was first proposed in a different form by Mike Dukakis when he was governor in the 1980s, and it took decades. So bills take a long time to pass, but that's the reason it should take a long time.
All right, so there's one that's similar to Melissa's bill that's just starting the process, and that's the one that involves the murder of Jared Remy's girlfriend. As a result of that murder last August, there's a bill proceeding that would make it more difficult for someone who has committed domestic violence to be out, to be free, as he was.
Right.
Would you, if you're running for Senate, would you just bang off the bat sign that thing, or would you want to vet it? I mean, it could take many years.
That's a fair question. When you lose a child, you lose something, you lose somebody very special. I believe the Commonwealth of Mass has an obligation. I would sign a bill like that immediately, because he had a track record. You know, you do something once or twice, we have an obligation to help people get rehab. I think people need a second chance. The question is, when you do it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, I think you violated the number of chances.
So yours is 3 strikes. What's your 3?
3.
And I know that's the way Melissa's bill works.
Right, and I still believe in the idea that give you a chance for someone to make a mistake. I think we all make mistakes, and we should, recognize that. But there's a period in time where enough is enough, and our children, our wives, our girlfriends should be. And they shouldn't be harassed by a person like that. These
are the most controversial bills that go through any state legislature. Anything that has a finite, term and a number on it. 3 strikes in California ended up being somewhat disastrous for that state. So anything like that limits somebody's civil liberties by law.
We live in a very complex world, and the idea of a one-size-fits-all solution usually doesn't fit in every case. And so the legislative process is designed to understand and learn from that and try and pass something that works most of the time but doesn't make egregious errors on one side or the other.
It's not a 3 strikes you're out bill. It's a bill you're found guilty of the 3rd crime. You're just sentenced for that guideline sentence. So this bill that's proposed and exists is nothing like the California bill.
I know it's not like it, but I just said anything that has a number on like that gets extra scrutiny. All right, Les Gossel, Jeffrey Beckwith, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.